Welcome. What you are about to watch is not science fiction, and it is not folklore. It is a serious investigation into one of history's most compelling unresolved questions: the mystery of ancient water harvesting, how desert civilizations survived for millennia. Across the world, in universities, research institutes, and field excavations, serious scholars are wrestling with evidence that does not fit the accepted story. Evidence that has been documented, measured, and peer-reviewed, and that still has no satisfying conventional explanation. We are going to look at that evidence carefully, without prejudice in either direction, not dismissing what is extraordinary, but not accepting it without scrutiny either. The truth, as always, is in the details. 37,000 underground aqueducts built 3,000 years ago are still providing water to rural Iran today. The qanat, a gently sloping tunnel cut through rock and earth to bring groundwater from mountain aquifers to lowland fields, requires no pumps, no electricity, no modern infrastructure. It runs on gravity and engineering knowledge developed in the Persian Empire, and it is still working. Ancient desert civilizations solved water problems that modern engineers still struggle with. The Nabataeans of Petra supplied 30,000 people in the Jordanian desert using ceramic pipes, cisterns, and dams so precisely engineered they managed flash floods and seasonal drought simultaneously. The Khmer Empire at Angkor maintained a managed hydraulic landscape of 1,000 square kilometers, feeding a city of 1 million people in the Cambodian jungle. The Romans built aqueducts so well that sections are still flowing today. The Aqua Virgo, completed 19 BC, still feeds the Trevi Fountain. These were not primitive solutions that later civilizations outgrew. They were sophisticated engineering achievements that later civilizations forgot. The collapse of Angkor, one of the largest pre-industrial cities in human history, appears to have been triggered by the catastrophic failure of its hydraulic network. 2 billion people today lack safely managed drinking water. What exactly did these civilizations know that we have chosen not to remember? This is where our investigation begins. Stay with us, because the further we go into the evidence, the more extraordinary it becomes. The story you think you know is only the surface. Beneath it lies something far more remarkable. Let us begin. Before we examine the specific evidence, we need to step back and understand the context. This case does not exist in isolation. It sits within the broader phenomenon of lost civilizations, and to properly evaluate what we are looking at, we need to understand the broader picture that surrounds it. The ocean has a long memory. As the last ice age ended around 12,000 years ago, sea levels worldwide rose by more than 120 meters, enough to drown entire coastal civilizations that may have flourished along shorelines that no longer exist. The continental shelves that now lie submerged beneath shallow coastal seas were once habitable land. River deltas, bays, and estuaries that today lie underwater were once the most attractive real estate on Earth, rich in resources, temperate in climate, and accessible by sea. If ancient peoples built their settlements where resources were most abundant, then much of the archaeological record of early civilization may be sitting on the ocean floor, invisible to conventional excavation. This is not speculation. Marine archaeologists have already found submerged ruins at dozens of locations worldwide, off the coasts of India, Japan, Cuba, and the Mediterranean islands. In some cases, these structures are clearly artificial: stone walls, carved steps, and rectilinear platforms that could not have formed naturally. The academic debate is not whether these structures exist, but what they mean. Were they built by unknown pre-flood cultures, or were they coastal settlements of known civilizations gradually abandoned as waters rose? The answer, in many cases, remains open. What oral traditions add to this picture is equally significant. Cultures living on or near the sea throughout the tropics and subtropics carry remarkably consistent flood narratives, stories of a great inundation that drowned an earlier world. These are not borrowed from one another through colonial contact. They predate European exploration. They appear to be independent memories of a shared catastrophe. the end of the last ice age, when the world coastlines changed forever and entire ways of life were drowned. The civilizations that built on those shores, if they existed, vanished beneath the waves. This context matters because it tells us something important. What we are about to investigate is not an isolated curiosity. It is part of a pattern that researchers in multiple fields have been independently documenting for decades. And patterns, in science, demand explanation. With that foundation in place, let us now turn to the specific case at hand. Now we reach the heart of the matter, the core evidence surrounding ancient water harvesting. How desert civilizations survived for millennia is more extensive, more verified, and more troubling for conventional explanations than most people realize. Let us walk through it systematically, fact by fact, and allow the evidence to speak for itself. We are not going to speculate here. Every point that follows is documented in peer-reviewed publications, official archaeological records, or government archives that are publicly accessible. The question is not whether these facts are real. The question is what they mean. Consider this first extraordinary detail. Qanats, gently sloping underground aqueducts that tap mountain aquifers and carry water by gravity to lowland fields, were invented in Persia approximately 3,000 years ago. More than 37,000 are still operational in Iran today, supplying roughly 75% of rural Iran's water. The deepest known qanat reaches 360 meters below the surface. The technique spread across the Islamic world, reaching Spain, North Africa, Afghanistan, and the Arabian Peninsula, where variants are known as Falaj, Fagara, and Kharez. This single data point, if taken in isolation, might be set aside. Anomalies happen, instruments malfunction, researchers make mistakes. But as we continue, you will see that this is not an isolated anomaly. It is part of a consistent and documented pattern. But that is only the beginning. Researchers also discovered the Nabataean water system at Petra supplied an estimated 30,000 people in the Jordanian desert using a network of ceramic pipes, open channels, cisterns, and dams. The system was sophisticated enough to manage both the scarcity of annual rainfall and the sudden danger of flash floods. A tunnel called the Sick Dam redirected floodwater away from the city center. Liane Badal's research confirmed the system could store approximately 40 million liters at maximum capacity, an extraordinary achievement in one of the world's driest landscapes. Now, a skeptic might propose an alternative explanation for this, and that is entirely reasonable. We should always test alternative explanations before accepting extraordinary ones. The problem is that the alternative explanations, when examined carefully, create more problems than they solve. The mystery deepens when we examine runoff agriculture in the Negev Desert, practiced during the Israelite and Byzantine periods, channeled rare flash floods onto terraced hillside fields using low stone walls and shaped channels. These systems, some dating back 4,000 years, were experimentally restored by Israeli archaeologists at Ben Gurion University using the original construction techniques. Restored fields produced viable crops in a desert receiving less than 100 millimeters of annual rainfall, demonstrating the empirical precision of the ancient system's design. This is where the conventional account begins to strain. Each individual fact might be dismissed or minimized in isolation, but the cumulative weight of the evidence is another matter entirely. Perhaps most remarkable of all, the hydraulic landscape of Angkor, the Khmer capital in modern Cambodia, covered approximately 1,000 square kilometers at its height, including enormous reservoirs called barrays, an extensive canal network, and hundreds of smaller tanks. This infrastructure supported a city of roughly 1 million people, one of the largest pre-industrial urban populations on Earth. Roland Fletcher's research showed the hydraulic system was central to Angkor's existence, and its catastrophic failure in the 14th and 15th centuries was central to Angkor's collapse. Researchers who have examined this evidence have described it as genuinely difficult to explain within the accepted framework. These are not fringe commentators. They are credentialed academics publishing in mainstream journals, raising questions that the field has not yet satisfactorily answered. Then there is the matter of the Roman aqueduct Aqua Virgo, completed in 19 BC by Marcus Agrippa, has supplied fresh water to Rome almost continuously for over 2,000 years. Its water still feeds the Trevi Fountain today. The Romans built 11 aqueducts supplying Rome, totaling over 800 kilometers of channels, and capable of delivering an estimated 1 million cubic meters of water to the city daily, a per capita supply that equaled or exceeded that of many modern European cities well into the industrial era. What makes this particularly significant is its independence from the previous points. This is not a case of one theory requiring another. These are separate lines of evidence converging on the same uncomfortable conclusion. Adding to the enigma is this finding: the ancient Lomas culture of coastal Peru harvested water from Pacific fog using hillside vegetation, a technique now inspiring modern atmospheric water generators. The coastal Atacama Desert receives almost no rain, but the persistent fog called garua carries enough moisture to sustain life when captured efficiently. Contemporary fog-catching nets in Lima, developed in part by studying the Lomas principle, collect 200 to 400 liters per net per day under favorable conditions, providing water to communities with no other source. Taken together, these facts form a pattern that cannot be explained by coincidence, misidentification, or methodological error. Each piece of evidence has been examined by skeptics. Each has been subjected to alternative explanations. And in each case, the alternative explanation falls short of accounting for everything that has been documented. We are left with a body of evidence that demands explanation and an accepted narrative that does not provide one. This is where serious inquiry begins. Now that we have established the evidence, we need to examine the theories that researchers have proposed to explain ancient water harvesting, how desert civilizations survived for millennia. This is where the debate becomes most intense, because the theories reflect not just different interpretations of the same evidence, but fundamentally different assumptions about what is possible and what the past looked like. Understanding these theories is not just an academic exercise. Each one has been championed by serious researchers with genuine credentials, and each one captures something that the others miss. The truth, if it is ever established, will likely draw on elements of several. The first major explanation proposed by researchers holds that ancient hydraulic engineering achieved a level of sophistication fully equivalent to anything produced in its historical context. Trevor Hodges' study Roman aqueducts and water supply demonstrated that Roman engineers understood fluid dynamics, calculated gradients, managed pressure, and solved distribution problems with mathematical rigor. The assumption that ancient engineering was inferior reflects ignorance of ancient capabilities rather than evidence. The technology was adapted to available materials and ecological conditions, and in its specific climatic contexts, it frequently outperformed infrastructure built centuries later. This interpretation has significant academic support and is backed by substantial evidence, but it is not without problems. Critics point out that it requires assumptions that go beyond what the evidence strictly supports, and that key predictions of this theory have not been confirmed by subsequent research. It remains contested, and the contest is productive. A rival school of thought argues that the collapse of hydraulic systems was the primary driver of urban abandonment in complex ancient societies. Roland Fletcher's research at Angkor demonstrated that catastrophic flooding in the 14th and 15th centuries damaged the hydraulic network beyond repair, triggering agricultural failure and population dispersal. This hydraulic collapse model has been applied to Mohenjo-Daro and Tikal as well. The main objection is that political, military, and climatic factors are difficult to separate cleanly from engineering failure in the archaeological record of any single civilization's decline. This theory is controversial, and deliberately so. Its proponents argue that the evidence demands an explanation, outside the conventional framework. Critics counter that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, and that the evidence presented, while suggestive, does not yet meet that standard. The debate continues in peer-reviewed literature. Perhaps the most unconventional theory suggests that water management knowledge developed by ancient civilizations was not preserved in modern engineering traditions and must be actively rediscovered rather than adapted from existing practice. The qanat tradition survived in Iran and parts of the Islamic world, but was largely unknown to Western hydraulic engineering until the 20th century. Ancient Negev runoff methods were rediscovered by archaeologists in the 1950s and found to work. This suggests ancient water knowledge is a practical resource that contemporary engineers should systematically document, test, and deploy in water-scarce environments. What is striking about this debate is not merely that experts disagree, that is normal and healthy in science. What is striking is the quality of the disagreement. Serious researchers, working from the same body of evidence, reaching genuinely different conclusions. That level of fundamental disagreement, when it persists over decades, is a signal that something important has not yet been understood. The question is not which of these theories is right. The question is whether any of them is right, or whether the truth is something that none of the current frameworks has yet been able to capture. The case surrounding ancient water harvesting, how desert civilizations survived for millennia, does not rest on speculation alone. What distinguishes this investigation from pure mythology is the existence of documented, physical, verifiable evidence, material that has been examined by credentialed researchers and whose authenticity is not seriously disputed. What is disputed is its interpretation. Let us review the most significant documented evidence as objectively as possible. We are not going to cherry-pick the data that supports a preferred conclusion. We are going to lay out what exists and let you draw your own assessment. Physical evidence supporting this account includes Iranian qanats were inscribed on the UNESCO representative list of intangible cultural heritage in 2016, recognizing their continued functional importance and the survival of the associated engineering tradition. They supply approximately 75% of Iran's rural water today. The UNESCO inscription noted that qanat knowledge, including surveying, excavation, maintenance, and water rights management, constitutes a living practice continuously transmitted across generations in communities throughout the Iranian plateau and beyond. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. Investigators have documented Angkor LIDAR surveys conducted between 2012 and 2015 by the Greater Angkor Project revealed the full extent of the hydraulic network, far larger and more complex than ground-level mapping had indicated. Fletcher and colleagues demonstrated the system suffered repeated catastrophic flood events in the 14th and 15th centuries, with major channels blocked and water distribution severely disrupted. The data confirmed that hydraulic failure, not military defeat or epidemic alone, drove the population dispersal that ended Angkor as a functioning urban center. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. On-site analysis revealed Negev runoff agriculture sites were experimentally restored using only original construction techniques. Stone walls repositioned by hand, channel profiles matching ancient originals. Crops were grown successfully in fields receiving under 100 millimeters of annual rainfall. Research conducted primarily at Ben Gurion University of the Negev demonstrated that ancient Israelite and Byzantine farmers developed an empirically optimal system for harvesting scarce rainfall in this specific environment, a system that modern agriculture in the same region has largely not replicated. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. Each individual piece of evidence might, in principle, be explained away. A single anomalous artifact might be misidentified. A single anomalous date might reflect contamination. A single anomalous eyewitness account might reflect misperception. The question is whether all of the evidence can be explained away, and whether the explanations required are more or less plausible than the evidence itself. When multiple independent lines of inquiry converge on the same conclusion, that convergence is the most powerful signal in empirical science. And that is exactly what we are seeing here. We have examined the history, the evidence, and the theories surrounding ancient water harvesting, how desert civilizations survived for millennia. Now we need to ask the question that is sometimes overlooked in discussions of ancient mysteries. Why does this matter? What does it mean for us today? It would be easy to file this away as an interesting historical curiosity, a puzzle from a distant past with no bearing on our present lives. That would be a fundamental mistake. The questions raised by this case touch on issues that are directly relevant to who we are, where we came from, and what the human story actually looks like before the period covered by conventional history. Ancient water technology is undergoing serious reevaluation as global water scarcity intensifies. Qanat technology is being reintroduced in Afghanistan, Morocco, and Spain as a low-cost, low-energy alternative to diesel pumping. Angkor's hydraulic failure is now a standard case study in climate resilience research, cited in discussions of how urban systems can catastrophically fail under sustained environmental pressure. Ben Gurion University continues to study Negev runoff agriculture as a practical approach to semi-arid food production. The WHO estimates 2 billion people currently lack safely managed drinking water. Modern atmospheric water generators draw directly on fog-catching principles used by the ancient Lomas culture. The Trevi Fountain is still fed by a 2,000-year-old Roman aqueduct. The engineering these civilizations developed was not primitive, but deeply optimized, and recovering it may be one of the more practical things archaeology can offer the present century. Furthermore, the tools available to investigate these questions are advancing rapidly. Satellite imaging, ground-penetrating radar, ancient DNA analysis, isotopic tracing, and deep-sea sonar are all providing capabilities that previous generations of researchers could only dream of. Cases that were genuinely unresolvable 10 years ago are now open to new analysis, and the findings, consistently, are expanding rather than contracting the mystery. The investigation continues. New discoveries are being made. New analyses are being published. New voices are entering the conversation from disciplines that were not previously part of the discussion. The answers, when they come, and they will come, will not merely solve a historical puzzle. They will force a fundamental revision of assumptions that underpin our entire understanding of human history and human potential. We have now walked through the complete case of ancient water harvesting, how desert civilizations survived for millennia from the historical record, through the physical evidence across the competing theories, and into the modern significance of what remains unresolved. What the story of ancient engineering ultimately reveals is not just a historical puzzle. It is a mirror. It reflects our assumptions back at us, our assumptions about what ancient people were capable of, about how knowledge is gained and lost across the centuries, and about the relationship between what we know and what we merely think we know. The evidence presented in this documentary, why is real? The questions it raises are genuine. The debate among researchers is ongoing, and that is healthy. Science is not a set of conclusions. It is a process. And the process requires that we remain open to evidence that challenges what we thought we knew, however uncomfortable that challenge might be. If you came to this documentary as a skeptic, we hope the evidence gave you something to think about. If you came as a true believer, we hope the critical examination gave you a more nuanced picture. The truth, as always, lies in the evidence, not in what we want to be true. Thank you for watching. If this investigation sparked your curiosity, please subscribe to the channel. We publish new documentaries every week, covering the full range of historical mysteries that the mainstream has not yet adequately explained. Leave a comment below telling us which case you want us to investigate next. The conversation continues. The investigation never ends.